One of the most beautiful experience I had with cinema was to watch movies in the square of the city, where there is a massive screen where thousands of people are sitting there, even on the ground, to watch Buster Keaton films and Charlie Chaplin films with live music. That is what really still gives me goosebumps, because they are experiences that are very much felt, and the city stops to watch those images.
Welcome to India Unarchived, a podcast by the Archives of Contemporary India, Ashoka University. Today, we are honored to host Professor Monia Acciari, a scholar of South Asian cinema and cultural heritage.
Professor Monia's research focuses on film identity, particularly on film festivals and film archiving. She's a professor at Montfort University and has contributed majorly to transnational media studies.
Beyond academia, she actively engages in discussions on cultural preservation, shaping contemporary debates on South Asian visual culture. We are excited to have her with us today and hear her insights on cinema, heritage, archiving. I hope you enjoy the episode with us. Thank you.
Good morning, Professor Monia. I'm Arushi Bhargav and this is
I'm Mumtaz Muhyiddin.
and we are Young India Fellows from the batch of 2025. We are very excited to have you here as a guest for our podcast series, India Unarchived by Archives of Contemporary India.
Good morning, both. Thank you for calling me.
Professor Monia, in our past episodes, we've explored archiving from so many angles, but film archiving is quite new to us, and I'm sure all of our viewers also find it something new. Could you break it down for us? What exactly is film archiving?
So film archiving is, let's start from something that is traditional, right? So film archiving would mean to make sure that there is a legacy of films in different format, in different kind of gauge, of all films. Okay, so an archive would be a place which will have a sense of organization about how those films are kept, preserved, and made available as a legacy. And that would be the very traditional way of thinking about archive. There are also other forms of archives of cinema, which would be to make sure that everything that is about the material culture of a film culture is going to be preserved. And so, say for instance, song booklets, which are very popular here in India, all that materiality, such as glass slides that were used for publicity, posters, and all of that needs to be archived as well. And now there is a lot of interest in making sure that that is being archived. And then there is a third, perhaps, and to me, very important aspect of archiving that I'm trying to sort of push as part of my research. It's the everyday. I came across through people, by interviewing people, by being with people, which is something I enjoy a lot, is to know about their stories, is to look at their, often they would have at home objects of the everyday, say boxes, talc boxes, or a diversity of material that they keep as a legacy and as a sort of an affective affiliation with cinema. And those stories of the quotidian, of the mundane, it's what is not recorded, and it's something that doesn't belong to the traditional archiving. But I think it's important to capture that aspect as well. So there are multiple dimensions in which cinema should be or is being archived.
Professor, as a follow-up question, have you ever found a particular film, archive, or even a historical monument or an object that actually sparked your interest in this domain?
So I come. My background is in I studied film archiving back when I had your age. I was back in Italy, and my alma mater is the University of Bologna. And in the University of Bologna, there is actually in Bologna, in the Bologna city, there is a beautiful film festival, which is one of the most popular in the world, il Festival del Cinema Ritrovato, which is a festival about restored films across the world. And one of the most beautiful experience I had with cinema was to watch movies in the square of the city, where there is a massive screen, where thousands of people are sitting there, even on the ground, to watch, say, Buster Keaton films and Charlie Chaplin films with live music. That is what really still gives me goosebumps, because they are experiences that are very much felt, and the city stops to watch those images. And then that was something that really inspired me to be into that domain. And then I've been lucky, because in Bologna I could access the Cinetheque, where films are stored and preserved. I've studied preservation. We have been looking at restoration. All that stays with you. Then life sometimes puts you on pause, kind of asks you to do something else, to find back what you're really interested in. And for a period of time, archives were marginal to my work. Then fortuitous encounters, as always, have changed my life, and I met senior colleagues back in UK who brought me back to the reality of what I was really interested in. And so back I'm into archiving.
Professor, on the topic of preservation, what exactly is your specialization in film archiving?
So I'm a film historian, first of all. So I look at evidence and history that are available in film archives. However, I have studied preservation, especially real preservation. I teach that as well. I teach film archives back in UK. We look at key aspect of archiving. We look at how films, for instance, deteriorates at different formats. We look at, say, nitrate films, which were the very sort of first and early formats used to make films, how they deteriorate, how delicate they are, and how important it is to handle them in a certain way. And we look at the evolution of not just the film language, but at the evolution of the materials as well. And so from nitrate, we look at then acetate and how they are affected by the environment. So it's very much about being able to work with the materiality of cinema, and to teach that to my students as well. That sort of captures and that sort of keeps me engaged with archives. Of course, alongside searching for stories that have never been perhaps found, or stories that are not so well accounted, let's put it like that.
Professor, film archiving is a very relatively new profession, especially when you consider filmmaking itself is a fairly recent art form. So when and where did film archiving actually begin?
Right, film archiving, well, let's say archives, okay? It's something that started in the 1930s with a French person, Langlois, who thought, alongside other people in Europe, especially the UK, Germany, and all that, France, of course, they thought, oh, we are making films, huh? Maybe this is something that we need to make sure that we keep it. And so with Langlois, the overall idea of what an archive should be started. Inevitably, at the very beginning, the archiving, it was to make sure that the films would be kept. But then the profession itself, it's something that keeps changing now as well, with new materiality, new films, new intangible outputs as well, from digital production to oral history. There are new professions that are shaped by what we have, and that means the overall profession of archiving keeps changing. You still need people that know how to, as I say, handle paper, nitrate film, acetate film, and whatnot. But you also need people that understand digital archiving, for instance, or they understand different dimension of what archiving means. And it's never a one profession. Archiving is multiple professions that come together to make sure that the legacy of the past is there for the future.
Professor, as Arushi suggested, that people are not much aware about film archiving as a profession. Do you think we have lost any tangible material in the entire process? For example, let's take Georges Méliès, for example. He burned most of his own material in financial distress. What are your thoughts on that? How much cinematic history do you think we have lost along the way?
So about the profession, I think that more than thinking about film archiving as not a serious profession, I think there wasn't awareness rather about film archiving as a layered profession, which means there wasn't awareness about the many dimensions of archiving. And so it was just about, oh, let's just keep those films somewhere. It's a lot more than that. So when technology changed, awareness about film archiving changed, then you would have, how to put it, a different take about what is an archiving profession. And that means with material that we lose, what kind of specialism do we need to make sure that a paper, a poster, a script, it's not going to be lost. And that's the very first thing. When it comes to, of course, Georges Méliès, we are at the beginning of the century, so there was no film archiving, in the view. Georges Méliès was a French filmmaker, father of French cinema and of sci-fi films and all that. So Georges Méliès is a very peculiar person. He was someone who wanted to experiment with the medium. He was not interested in making sure that specific material would stay. What he was interested in was to make sure that the story would stay. Of course, he was burning stuff and whatnot, but because he didn't have, like anyone at the beginning of the century, awareness of we should preserve it. There was no sense of it. Definitely, we lost a lot of material. A lot. I can't possibly explain. We are still losing it. Yeah. Initially, it's because there was no awareness. Then the problem was that some places around the world did not have the infrastructure. But then, because nothing lasts forever, as far as this, silly might sound, but this is the truth. Lots of Georges Méliès films, some have been are preserved by the Cinémathèque Française, but not so much. And often when you open some of the cans with Méliès films, what you find are just fragments. Because unfortunately, the nature of nitrate films is to deteriorate, like anything else, like even paper. We lost a lot. And when it comes to India, sadly, so sadly, I must say, we lost a huge amount of material. Most of the silent cinema of India is gone, most of it, because there was a huge fire at the National Film Archive, and so that was lost. Plus, in India, despite the many studios who produced films at the beginning, they lost their They lost their material as well because they did not have the infrastructure to preserve, to have an archive of their own history, basically. Hence, a lot is lost.
Some were even burned, like Prabhat Studio.
Prabhat Studios, Prabhat, yes, it's a huge example. Studios in Tamil Nadu, all Tamil cinema, silent Tamil cinema. It's lot is gone, really, sadly. So we need to search for histories, even those histories which are really belong to the past, elsewhere. We can't find them as a can in archives. It's very, very, very tough. Maybe, and I want to say maybe, but I know some colleagues believe, to my same fate to some extent. Some films, especially of the silent era or the early talkies, might be found in personal collections. Some might be found on the other side of India. Some are potentially in Pakistan, because before partition, many people would be living together, and so some of that material after partition might have gone to the other side with the people. Those are also positions, but there are film collectors over there as well, given there isn't a huge film culture or a film archive. So, we are, as historians, we are all hopefully that at some point somewhere will come up and say, hey, we got Alamara. That would be amazing. But yes, in general, especially for the cinema that belongs to the beginning, a lot has been lost.
Hopefully we find it.
Fingers crossed, that would be right.
Hope is a good thing, maybe the best disease.
Yes, we need to be positive. There is another place actually that we need to keep in mind. India, of course, we're talking about India, Indian cinema. We need to be open to the possibility of finding films even abroad. India was a colony, of course. Yes. And so there are in fact some films which are amateur film or travelogue. They are at the BFI, at the British Film Institute. So you never know, there might be some family again, some private collectors or someone who moved to the UK, and there might be some testimony of that history that here so far we don't have.
I was just curious about if you could tell us more about what's the connection between films and history? Like, how are they connected?
Many connections. Cinema is a moment in history, first of all. So cinema is something that happened in a distinct moment in time. It's a testimony of technological changes, human ambition, experimentation, historical creativity, and it's a moment that records also in the making history, right? So think about the Lumiere. Lumiere have been crazy. They have experimented with the medium. They have used an approach to cinema, which was, of course, something very, very elemental if you think about what we have now, yet very exciting. Think about the very first screening of the arrival of the train at La Ciotat, a couple of minutes long, film. People at the time, it was said that as soon as the train reached, people ran away because because they were scared. They were not used to understand what was that technology. It records history in the making, right? Then they traveled. They started recording the world into India. They are the first that perhaps they offered us what they call travelogue. Through them, we started looking at the world and at the evolution of and the changes in the world, at the differences in different parts of the world. So to me, cinema is, as I said, it's a significant, turn and change in history and in the history of human beings. Plus, it's a way of recording history as well. Cinema now, it's also a way to preserve history as well. Often we have films that are either have a documentary feel or a narrative feel, but they still are a testimony of something, either a story or, as I said, an event, but certainly are always a testimony of human creativity. We are history.
Yes.
And so cinema enables that to me.
We have seen cinema evolve from silent films to talkies, from black and white to color, and now it's a world where films can be shot on mobile phones. So clearly, the access is democratized to a large extent. So, how do you think the shift is redefining the idea of what actually the film is? And has the rise of digital and mobile storytelling changed the essence of cinema?
So cinema is it's always in evolution. It's something that we can't compartmentalize cinema as being something, right? So say again, I just go back to history because for me it's a comfort place. But say the changes that we see from someone like Griffith in the US, who was making films in a very distinct manner. The storyline was pretty flat. And then, boom, suddenly we have the Russian movement, who started using, all the Kuleshov effect. They started using editing to actually say, hold on, I think there is a lot more that we can do. And they did. And that was an evolution in technology, an evolution in the cinematic language. This is what we are experiencing now as well. Inevitably, the digital format, the freedom also of using the mobile phone to document something, to tell a story. Like you said, it democratizes the way in which stories can be told. Also, this kind of technology offers the way of watching films different. So you make film, you watch it immediately. Before, filming in 35 millimeters, say 35 millimeters, 70, whatever, wasn't so cheap, first of all. And you couldn't really make many mistakes, isn't it? Because it was costly. This culture of taking, recording, deleting, it's interesting, it's enabling, but disabling as well, because we lose a lot as well. We lose, a moment. We are not interested in a moment, we delete it. But what if it was interested for someone else? Something that stays on a 35 millimeter. And I might say this is a bias because I'm a purist. Yeah, sort of the digital aspect, it's something that troubles me a little bit.
There are a lot of streaming platforms these days. Netflix. Would you consider Netflix as an archive for films?
Let me just connect these with the work of a scholar. Okay, I'm not going to go into the detail, but very broadly, the scholar called Gell, he wrote an article very interesting about when YouTube was considered a space, for preservation. And he says, we need to think about what I always encourage my students to think about is our positionality. So what's our position about archives? Archivists who would have a distinct way of recording a document, either a film or something material, by indexing, by using a certain process, would consider Netflix, YouTube, or would consider the idea of those spaces as archive an abomination. They would think like, what is this nonsense? Because they have a structure, because they have a structured way of making sure that that material is available. A scholar would think, this is fancy, because, well, after all, there are material available to us. We can access it. But what they mean within the context of Netflix, it's quite debatable. Because in what way can we believe those spaces to be archival in nature? They are repositories.
Yes.
And for a short period of time of movies, but archives are richer places with
Inclusive, more inclusive.
yeah, with themes, with materials of different kind, places that you can keep building with additional stories, additional material. Netflix, for instance, is just a space for consumption. I know some colleagues would be like, oh, but you should be a lot more open. But I also think that in an archival context, we have some obligations and some kind of standard needs to be still maintained. But interestingly enough, you might find some of early Falke's work in YouTube. And that is because YouTube is being used by, say, National Film Archive as a means to share material and then sort of provide access to some content.
Professor, a slightly different question. Since filmmaking is a very expensive art form, but it's not something which is usually preserved enough. I mean, there have been efforts such as Martin Scorsese's Film Foundation, which has restored so many films. But overall, we don't see such efforts everywhere. Do you think there's a responsibility and a role of production houses, producers towards film archiving? What can be achieved?
Yes, I think there should be a lot more awareness about at least preserving your stuff.
Your own stuff, yeah.
Right. The work of Martin Scorsese is very important. That I had the chance to look very closely at what is being done because Martin Scorsese collaborates with Bologna, with the Cineteca on Bologna, and what I love of that effort is that the Scorsese Foundation supports the restoration and preservation of world cinema. Which is once again, very democratic, very important. It supports, he comes to support once again that disparity of global north and global south. And a lot of the themes that you will find in the Martin Scorsese Foundation are themes, say, from Africa, from India. The Film Heritage Foundation has been working quite closely with them, but it's an effort that any production house should think about. And that's why I'm saying in the past, there aren't many production houses that have been able to keep. Some have, Prabat was one of them, but others have not, placed any, they have not invested in that. I think now that there is a lot more awareness about preserving, the past, hopefully there are going to be more effort sort of towards that.
Professor, going back to Bologna and the film festivals, I've heard you've written about film festivals and their role in cultural preservation. Would you say that they can act as alternate archives?
Because my approach to film festival comes from the Italian context, and of course the Bologna experience is something that changed completely my understanding of film festivals. I do see film festival as a repository of the past, still a bit volatile, but a festival like il Festival del Cinema Ritrovato in Bologna is a beautiful example of how film from the past screened are shared, and there is a sense of community that the festival fostered. And it is that community across the world, or communities across the world, that keep the past together.
Yes.
Under, the huge umbrella of the festival. So through that experience, I wanted to make sure that whatever I was writing about festival, and also I'm a practitioner, so I'm co-directing a festival in the UK on Indian cinema.
Professor, which festival is
It's
that?
the UK Asian Film Festival.
Professor, if you could sit down with any one filmmaker or any figure from the cinematic world, who would it be and why? And what would you ask them?
Okay. Actually, just not one person. Okay, two couples.
Two couples.
I want to spoil you today. Yes. First couple would be in the 1960s. A French François Truffaut wrote a book which every time I read, I find that I always discover something. So François Truffaut interviewed Alfred Hitchcock. That book is so just amazing, and I would want them both to be. Don't get me wrong, I like you both, but there, and asking them question. And really, one of the questions I like to ask is, what do you think of cinema now? And all those questions that you asked about, what do you think about using, imagine asking to both, to François Truffaut and Hitchcock, what do you think about using mobile? I can just imagine. I mean, Hitchcock was very naughty, and even in his answers, so he would be fine. I mean, I expect, but of course, we never know, some naughty answer. So definitely that's those two. And two more people I like to really, really have here, Langlois and Pikenheimer. Pikenheimer was the person who essentially initiated the National Film Archive of India, had a huge impact in what is archive or are archives today in India. Those two there, a French and an Indian, talking about what archives are and what archives are now. Definitely, those four people would be welcomed. Yeah.
Professor, you're quite a long way from Italy and the UK. What has brought you here to the Ashoka archives, and how has your experience been so far?
I'm here since 5 weeks, so it's a very, like, I'm still very new to this. So yeah, well, Italy is where I come from, and then I moved to the UK to do my PhD, and I started working there. But since I moved to the UK, and through my PhD, I've started working on Indian cinema. So for me, coming to India is a really, it's a every 3 to 4 months I'm here. It's a need. I came to Ashoka because, of course, I came to know about the archives of Indians of contemporary India, and I was very interested in understanding, the practice, and I wanted to know more about the collections. And this is an archive that is growing, and I would say every day, with very talented professionals there. And for me, it's a matter of exchange of knowledge, especially because there is, for me it's very important this, because in the whole literature as well, on archiving and disparities between the global south and global north, there is the need of that sort of communication. And since I come from sort of the other side of the world, but knowing and having a very good understanding of archives, especially film archives here, I want to bring my knowledge here and learn from here as well.
Professor, do you think that Ashoka Archives has a role to play in the future of film archiving? And what do you think it would be? Have you found any collections that have stood out to you?
So there are, I think there is a lot of potential for film archiving. Of course, we need to again understand what type of material the archive can host. Hosting actual films, as in real, that's a very complicated business, even a very expensive business. Film archiving requires a lot of infrastructure. And knowledge on film handling and all that, film inspection, and yeah, all those technicalities. But definitely there is space for that with distinct trainings, for instance, on young people like you. There is also space for setting up an archiving of material culture, working with, in my opinion, working with personal collectors who have a plethora of material there at home, but that often is, kept not in ideal condition. I think there is scope for, for collaboration between the archive here and personal collector to try and become the repository of their family memories, of families and cinema. I think this space has a lot of potential. First, because there is space, there is the infrastructure, and because there are the knowledge to do so.
I think you should definitely look at Sai Paranjpe's collection.
I'm aware. Yes, I'm aware about the collection. Given it's a woman, so I'm interested, and she's been because women in archives it's a different topic, but very important, and very important to make sure that women have a voice within archives. I think that collection is something I would want to look at, especially in terms of what kind of material do we find, what kind of material has the archive put together, and what does it mean in relation to her figure, essentially, as a filmmaker.
Professor, it was lovely meeting you here. We look forward to many such conversations in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
inviting
much.
me. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.